Shalom, when the stuff souls by giving no praise to Yahweh, Bashem Yahshua, Bashem Kodash, double honor to the apostle, great Mosul, and honor to brothers doing the work of the Most High in truth and in sincerity. Yahweh's real name, of whom the world ignorantly calls God Jehovah. Yahweh, his real name is Yahweh, and his son's true name is Yahweh Shai. And when we pray, but Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, but meaning in, her meaning that, and Shai meaning names, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai. Real quick, this is just a response to this video. The Great Taking is coming, right? Monetary reset will happen on Trump's watch, CBDC, and the Trump rebrand. And we certainly hope that it's within Trump's tenure, that this thing happens, right? When you're observing everything that's happening in the world, it's hard to see any other, it's hard to see this place going on for for a long time. Obviously everything is within the Lord's timing, but in terms of the Great Taking, right, it's literally what we are observing, right? And it reminds me of in the time of Egypt, when basically, if I can spell, I can't spell. But basically, it got so bad that people started to sell themselves, right? I'm just trying to remember which, yeah, Genesis 41. Let's see where we start from. Let me see. Maybe I want the one in 47. Right. So this is Genesis 47. And Slackish spare me, trying to find where to start from. So yeah, Genesis 47 from 13 says, and there was no bread in all the land, for the famine was very sore. So the land of Egypt and all the land of Canaan fainted by reason of the famine. And Joseph gathered up all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan for the corn which they bought. And Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. And when money failed, right, in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came unto Joseph and said, give us bread, for why should we die in thy presence? For the money faileth. Right. And you see that whenever there's like a natural disaster, what do people say? They go and plead for FEMA, or the equivalent in that country, right? And they plead for assistance from the government, right? Which in the times to come, that is going to ultimately be to one's detriment, right? Because the elites basically are planning to have people so desperate, right, that they're going to beg and plead for what will be the MOTB, right? Which is why we read this in Isaiah 31st chapter, right? And you see in the pericope here, help not in Egypt but in the Most High, right? It says, woe to them that go down to Egypt for help, right? And that is the situation that the elites are preparing, right? Where people will feel like the only way is to go to is to go to Egypt and beg for assistance, beg for help. It says, and stay on horses and trust in chariots because they are many, and in horsemen because they are very strong. But they look not unto the Holy One of Israel, neither see Yahweh, right? Because when you seek the Lord, right, you're hoping for these things to come, right? You're hoping for the Great Taking. In fact, you can't wait for the Great Taking, right? Because we understand that yes, we will go through hardship, right? But one of the beautiful things about whenever you read like Daniel 12, right, times about the hardship, the times about Jacob's trouble that were about to come in, right, there's always a thing about, yeah, it's going to be troublesome. However, the elect are going to be protected. So let's read this. Is Daniel 12 and 1. It says, and at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people, right, and there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to the same time. And at that time that people shall be delivered, everyone that shall be found written in the book, right? So ultimately, yeah, there's going to be a time of trouble, but the Lord is going to have, the archangel Michael stand up, right? And then also we can read similarly in Jeremiah 30 and 7, right? It says, alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it, right? So the elect ultimately going to be saved from all of these different calamities that are going to happen, right? Whereas people in the world, they're just going to be caught up, right? So this is back in Genesis 47, and let's jump to 16 now, right? It says, and Joseph said, give your cattle, and I'll give you for your cattle if money fell. And they brought their cattle unto Joseph, and Joseph gave them bread in exchange for horses, and for the flocks, and for the cattle of the herds, and for the asses, and he fed them with bread for all their cattle for that year. And when the year was ended, right, they came unto him the second year and said unto him, we will not hide it from my lord, how that our money is spent. My lord also hath our herds of cattle. There is not aught left in the sight of my lord but our bodies and our lands. Right, wherefore shall we die before thine eyes, both we and our land, buy us and our land for bread, and we and our land will be service unto Pharaoh, and give us seed that we may live and not die, that the land be not desolate. Right, and that's effectively, the situation that we're going to end up with, where the people are effectively going to start selling themselves, right? Basically saying, look, man, here's our body, right? Just protect us, right? And how they're going to do that by accepting the MOTB, right? So let's play some of this, right? I've got it at times 1.5. For the sake of time, hopefully it's not too fast.
Up, guys, Dabu 7, checking back in with you. We're getting ever so close to this big event that's going to go down here. It's going to be a global event. It's going to affect.
Right, yeah. So we're waiting for something. We don't know what it will be. We don't know, when it will come, right? But we know that something is coming. Something is brewing, right? Why? Because we are, we're watching, right? So Mark 13:33 says, "Take ye heed, watch and pray, for you know not when the time is," right? So we don't know when the Lord's coming back. We don't know how things are gonna, necessarily unfold. But we're keeping an eye on everything, right? We're looking at the whole thing with the day in which the Pope died, the day in which the new Pope was inaugurated, if you will, right? We're looking at those dates. We're like, yo, what's the meaning? We're looking at things happening in the in the heavens. The scriptures refer to how there shall be signs in the heavens and stuff like that. We're looking at news. We're looking at all of these things, right? Because ultimately, we have to, right? So let's carry on.
Affect our banks. It's going to affect the U.S. economy, and it's definitely tied in with China here. It looks like the whole plan is to have the U.S. and China kind of going back and forth, and what it's doing is it's wiping out jobs on both sides, and it's raising inflation on both sides.
Right, and is the thing as well. It's like in America, right? They've known nothing really but relative what's the word I'm looking for? Relative comfortability, right? Whereas in China, their parents knew discomfort, right? People, someone who's like 20, 30 years old, their parents knew discomfort, right? Someone that's 40 years old themselves may have known discomfort and quite heavy discomfort. So discomfort is relatively new. So rather, comfort is relatively new for so-called Chinese, which are they'll be Moab in the scriptures. Right? Whereas for an American, right, that's 2 or 3 generations that have known relative comfort, right? So it's going to affect the American more than it is going to affect the so-called Chinese, right? And then not only that, in America, man, it's just nothing but just division, right? Nothing but just people on psych meds and all of the above, right? This is Matthew 14, 24 and 12, I think it is actually. Right, it says, and because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. Right, and when you observe what happens in America, some of the stories you hear from that land, right? Look, man, when this thing goes down, it's gonna go down hella bad in America, right? And hey, we're all here for it, okay?
Which is also in turn raising the cost of living, which is wrecking everyone. It's doing it slowly.
Yeah, and why are they doing this? Because the elites have basically said that, look, man, hey, we need to start moving this ball along, right? That's why you remember you had I think it was Cotton Swab, who basically said, we need to fast forward Agenda 2030. Okay, so that's why you're seeing these things happening at such an explosive speed. Right, and Trump is the guy for it because everyone can just be like, well, Trump is just stupid. He doesn't know what he's doing, right? And this is why he's basically making policies that are destroying us, right? So then they can point the finger at Trump, not understanding there's a whole apparatus behind Trump that is really the ones that are pushing for these things, right? Because if it was just a Trump thing, why are we doing the same thing in the UK? Why are we pushing policies that are undermining the average worker? We're undermining the small business owner, right? And ultimately just destroying this would you call it, this the economy in the UK, right? Trump's doing it in the US, and that's of course, this saying, when America has a cold, the rest of the world sneezes, roughly paraphrasing. Okay, but the same thing is happening here. Okay, because there is an idea, right, that the elites are basically having play out right now. Says Micah 2 from the top, says, woe to them that devise iniquity and work evil upon their beds. When the morning is light, they practice it because it is in the power of their hand, and they cover it. And that's it, right? They devise iniquity, right? And then the Lord has given them the power to basically enact that iniquity, right? What we're seeing, all of these different plans, right? That secret council, you can read about that in Psalms, the 64th chapter, right? That secret council is basically being played out right now before our very eyes, right?
And they're signaling here that the whole entire system is about to be reset. I've said this several times, but it seems like we're really coming up on the event. There's two big key factors here. The debt crisis, number one. They've kicked the can down the road for a long time here. And at this point, there's not much further to kick it. When it comes to the feds and their most expensive items, Social Security sits at the top. And this debt crisis is approaching that level. When it surpasses it, it's going to be the most expensive thing that they have on their list to try to manage. Now, on the other side of this, you have Trump and everyone wanting to push and have a weak dollar. They believe they need the weak dollar to be able to get everything to come back into America. Others would say that this is a bad combination.
Which is the thing, man. Speaking about the camp yesterday, but it's like America. I was looking at what do you call it? I got gifted a KitchenAid. You one of those like super fancy stand mixers. Right? I got gifted one of those a few years back, and that thing was hella expensive. But why was it hella expensive? Because it's made in America. Right? Whereas if it was a cheap Chinese good, it would have been significantly cheaper than what the KitchenAid cost. Okay, and that's just what it is. Things that are made in America are more expensive because the company has to offset labor costs, right? Labor costs, and that's why, for instance, tech bros get paid a lot because big tech is in California, more specifically, was it Silicon Valley? Right, and when you look at the living costs in Silicon Valley, you have to pay to match someone living in Silicon Valley, right? So that's why, for instance, once again, that's why tech bros get paid a lot, right? Because of where they are. When you look at somewhere like China, right, the I don't know about, for instance, housing costs, but I know like the general living costs, everyday costs are relatively cheap, right? Significantly cheaper than say you have here in the UK, right? So therefore, someone doesn't necessarily need as high a wage, right, to have a quote decent life, if you want to put it that way, okay, right? Whereas like, for instance, somewhere in England, right, travel is hella expensive. Transport's hella expensive in this country. Okay, so you need to have a quote living wage that matches, right? So when we're talking about bringing manufacturing back, right, to America, even here in Britain, right, you basically have to accept that your goods are going to be significantly more expensive than the same good made abroad.
In that it looks like it's designed to collapse this thing, to bring everything down ultimately.
And that's it. That's the aim of the elites, to basically put an end to all of this.
Now, also, Trump just came out and made these comments and said, go out and buy stocks right now. It's going to be a rocket ship. Go out and buy them now. It seems to me
Even the way Dawu, the way he looks, he's like, yeah, I can't believe he said that, right? Because you know one of the things that we're looking at is effectively this economy, this basically hitting zero, right? This is Ecclesiastes 12 from verse 3. It says, in the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble, and the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders cease because they are few, Slakia, because there are few, talking about the lack of jobs that we're about to start seeing, right? And the beautiful thing is it's coming from several different angles, right? It's coming from the angle of being lost by this, but you know, this trade war, right? But then also by way of the AI. The AI is gonna take a hell of a lot of jobs, right? And the thing is, people be like, oh yeah, you know, this has happened before. People can just get other jobs. Like, no, this is coming for most jobs at exactly the same time, right? It's not, this is like nothing that's ever been seen before, right? And once again, what's going to happen when all of those people are now jobless and can't pay their mortgage, right? All of those houses are going to start flooding the market, right? You're going to see homelessness. You're just going to see a whole load of pain, right? That's what the elites are planning. The elites are planning pain, right? And once again, yeah, we may get caught up in it, right? But we all for it, right? So it says, and those that look out the windows be dark, and that's talking about your financial forecasters. All right, so on the day, and the doors shall be shut in the streets when the sound of the grinding is low, and he shall rise up at the voice of the bird, and all the daughters of music shall be brought low.
they're wanting everyone to go out and fatten their bags. And this is the big warning. If you're the criminal cartel out there and you're plotting the next Great Depression type of event, that means you're trying to take the farm, you're trying to take all the wealth from everyone. Today, all that wealth is stored in 401ks. Those 401ks are tied to the stock market. And they got everyone.
Yeah, I mean it's one of them ones where when you're observing what he's doing, right, to the world economy, like yo, why you even got a pension, right? You look at what happened in the UK when the pensions almost went kaput, right? When you had Liz Truss as prime minister and you know the Jake as the finance person. Okay, which once again that was all on purpose, right? But yeah, you know, anyone with a pension, man, yeah, you better, you know, take that pension out if you can, right? And get your money, man. Spend your money, right? Because these elites are basically gonna take everything that you've had, right?
Everyone trapped because you own just a little bit of shares and the big dogs own millions and billions. And as soon as they dump, they make all the money. They leave all these 401k people holding an empty bag. It's what I call the great taking. All they got to do is hit a sell button. They don't have to.
Yeah, and such a beautiful way of putting it. The great taking, right? Because that is what Esau is basically doing. That's what you've seen over the last couple of years, especially since the vid, right? The large transfer of wealth, right, from the poor to the super rich, right? Which is why this man is referred to as an oppressor. Right? That's why when you read Proverbs 29 and 2 speaks about, you know, when the wicked are in authority, people mourn. That's what you're seeing. Everyone is mourning. Right? That's why when you speak to people, right, you know, from all over the world, right, they'd say that their home country has issues. Like no one, you don't hear anyone say everything's just bless, you know, bless up everything, right? You know, you don't hear that, right? Because this world ultimately is just designed to fail, right? You know, that peace, that, you know, that ability to just be like, yeah, you know, it's calm, right? That's gonna come in the kingdom, man. But right now with Ian Power, yeah, people just gonna be in pain. People just gonna be suffering. Okay.
Come and rob your bank. They don't have to do nothing. All they have to do is sell.
Yeah, and that's what people don't understand about the markets. Remember the elder basically going into, you know, people, you know, but it's like, for instance, people say my house is worth, as an example, £1 million, right? But if everyone on the street is selling, then your house isn't worth £1 million, right? Your house is worth significantly less than that, right? So when everyone's selling, right? Guess what? The price, the value of what you have is significantly less. So when you have these whales, and as they're referred to in like trading, these big institutions, right? That can move, a random person may be like, oh, I've invested £1,000 into this, whereas a whale will be like, well, I've invested 10 million, right? When that person sells that 10 million or moves that 10 million around, guess what? That basically lowers the value of your holding, right? Such that you lose. Whereas that person, yeah, they may lose 1 or 2%, right? But they've still got millions, right? Whereas the average man has lost everything.
And they're going to leave everyone empty-handed. And there's about 10 big stocks right now that if you manipulate just a handful of them, you can affect the entire market right now. And with all these investigations coming up on these banks because of their connections with fentanyl and China and TD Bank and all this stuff, Bank of America's tied up in this. You're going to see this accelerate, in my opinion. And this is all part of the plan to bring them down. They want traditional banking brought down and to be no more. They want to replace
Right. Oh,
it with their digital dollar. Now, here's
right, and that's it. And what ultimately would that digital dollar be linked to? Well, it's going to be linked to that MOTB. Right, so Revelation 13, we start from verse 16. Right, it says, and he calls of all, both small and rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Right, which is talking about that MOTB, because it's going to become your everything. Right, just, yeah, and that's it. It's going to become your everything.
the kicker. Trump pulled a black magic trick on his base, and they were freaking out over a CBDC, right? Because they didn't understand the CBDC. All they heard was some people out here talking about it and saying that it's not going to be good, and they did no more research. Well, they knew this. Trump came out and signed an executive order and said, "I will not create a CBDC in America," and throws it like a bone to his people, his base. They chew on it. With the other hand, he pulls out WorldCoin, Trump coin, Melania coin, and gives it to them. They take it. They don't say a word. So what did you have against a CBDC? Do you even know? It's because bad people were controlling a blockchain that could track you. That's what it is. And yet you blindly just accepted a blockchain they handed you with the other hand. You just took it and didn't say a word. And it shows the ignorance. See, the whole threat was...
Yeah, and that's ultimately what it is. People are in darkness. People are asleep in this world, right? They have absolutely no idea, what's going on, right? But that's why the scripture says that, we're not asleep, right? Do not sleep. It's in Ephesians, right? Sleep as do others. I accidentally put on caps lock there. Ephesians, 1 Thessalonians 5, right? So 1 Thessalonians 5, I'm going to start from 4. I'll read from the top, right? So, but of the times and seasons, brethren, ye have no need that I write unto you, right? For ye know yourselves perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night, right? But that's why we are, paying attention. That's why we watch. That's why we observe what's going on, right? It says, for when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. Right? But ye, brethren, not in darkness, that they should overtake you as a thief, right? And it's not going to overtake us as a thief, because we're observing and we're watching for these things, right? It says, ye are children of the light and the children of the day, for we are not of the night nor of darkness. Therefore let us not sleep as do others, but let us watch and be sober. For they that sleep, sleep in the night, and they that be drunken are drunken in the night, right? But that's it. We are would you call it, awake, right? We're awake and we're observing everything that is happening right now. The one I did one in Ephesians, is Ephesians 5. Right, I'm gonna start from 14. Right, but it says, wherefore he saith, awake thou that sleepest, arise from the dead, right? And one of the things that we go out and do, right, is to basically preach this word, such that those that are to wake up, right, and those that ain't to wake up don't. That's just for them, right? But the scripture says, arise thou that sleepest, right, and arise from the dead, and Mashiach shall give thee light. See that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time, because the days are evil, right? So we're in evil times, right? But we're looking forward to these things.
The bad people, not the blockchain itself. The blockchain is just a technology. Businesses can use it all day long for good things. Good people can use it, and they won't be tracking all your stuff, won't be selling your information like we don't with the Under Project. You're not going to get none of that stuff. Bad people controlling a blockchain will track you, trace you, will cut off all your money, can do all these things that a tyrannical government can do that we've warned you about. And that's been the threat, okay? It's not the utility itself, it's the people. But people blindly fell in love with this administration and all the characters in it. And what they had planned to do is push this whole stablecoin bit. The stablecoin thing is going to help save the dollar because it's going to peg it to the dollar, but the Dems just shut that down. So expect they're going to repackage this and try to run it back through this whole stablecoin bill and push it through. There's one real big question here. Where's the gold at? Is the gold in Fort Knox? Like we need.
Because when you read the scriptures, that's real riches, right? This is Genesis 13 and 2, right? It says, and Abram was very rich in cattle, in silver, and in gold, right? So those are real riches, right? These FRNs and whatever, right? That's not riches, right? That is just it's fiat, right? Let it be so. Right, people have it is because people have basically faith in it, but it's not backed by anything. It's not real money.
Need to know. People deserve to know. That too, they keep kicking the can down the road. Like we need answers. Whatever the answer is when it comes to Fort Knox and the gold is going to reign huge. And really, if it's missing, you should already know. That's all they got to say, and we're in a crisis. If it is there, show us so we can just get on with it. But they're going to try to go the route of trying to, I think, trying to back something here, potentially by gold. If they do that, who knows if they try to confiscate again. Look back at the other two resets, the two big things that happened in the history of America. 1933, they confiscated all the gold. 71, Nixon removed gold from backing the dollar. Like, seems something else is in the mix here. Again, where's that gold in Fort Knox? So there's some of the big things. And when it comes to the CBDC, they're using this around the world in an anti-Trump form, meaning that these people that are small-minded, they're going to them and saying, oh, you hate Trump? Well, Trump hates the CBDC, so you should like the CBDC. And these small-minded people will say, okay, well, then we're for CBDC if Trump hates it, because we hate Trump, just to counter him. And it's working, because people are that ignorant, okay? Don't fall for the left-right paradigm, man.
Yep, and that's one of the things that the elders, speak about a lot, this left-right paradigm, right? Because ultimately, what do we know? We know that this thing, right? It's all of the same bird, right? It says Revelation 13:11. So I beheld another beast coming out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. When I'm speaking about that, that 2-party system, I speak like a dragon because you're going to start seeing these, these powers that be, basically showing their horns, right? Showing that actually, no, we are the devil, right? And that's the times that we're coming into.
Left wing, right wing, all part of the same bird.
And that's it. It's literally called wings, right? And a bird has 2 wings. That's what we're seeing, right? It's still the same damn bird.
Elevate your mind and see that and see what's going on here. There's a massive event about to unfold. Monetary, global reset, the way everything's traded, the whole nine. Like they're looking to reset the whole order. Okay, so I wouldn't get caught slipping with anything in an account that you can't get out. That's going to damage you big time.
Yeah, but for instance, what are one of the things that to be financially efficient, right? What do they make you do? They make you, for instance, to be tax efficient, right? They say in the UK at least, they say put your money in a pension, right? And then effectively that in the long term offsets your total tax liabilities, right? Whereas then also you have things where it's saying put your money in a what's the word in an ISA, right? Because if you put your money in a regular savings account, right, guess what, you get taxed on that. But if you put it in an ISA, like not a cash ISA, but if you put your money in an ISA, guess what, you can you it's not taxed, and you can get a higher interest rate. Now you can have ISAs that you can access easily, right? But you get a lower interest rate. So basically, you're always pushed to put your money in these long-term products, right? Such that, but the problem is they're getting ready to shut this system down, right? But they're pushing you to put your money into the longevity of this system, knowing that they're gonna take it all away, right? This man is the devil, okay? But I think that's pretty much it on this video. I'll leave a link in the description box. But yeah, that's just it, man. right? You know, the great taking is coming, and hey, but we're all here for it. So as always, those who does edify. Till next time, you say shalom.